Well, hello. It's your friend, Nathaniel, of Nathaniel Shannon and the Vanishing Twin. How are you guys doing today, World of Metal? Me? I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for asking. So, I made my transformation from multimedia and visual artist into musician about a decade ago, as I had been experimenting with doing some home recording. My girlfriend at the time had a Tascam digital 4-track, 8-track, and I was just messing around with incorporating some different sounds, specifically big Mark Lanigan, Cult of Luna, Jay Dilla, 3 6 Mafia, all these different genres of music compounded through kind of my voice onto tape, and it had caught the interest of my friend Eric from Aqualam Records, and he had kind of pursued me about potentially putting some of those songs out with the label that had just started. It took a little arm twisting, not gonna lie about that. And he kind of pushed me into exploring this songwriting process and creating something as a audio vehicle rather than relying on my visual media. I've been shooting music for the last 20 years, portrait work, photojournalism, do a lot of painting. You can see aliens. It's pretty sick. And this was just a new platform for me to explore some storytelling. The initial interest I had was not great. But the more I kind of felt comfortable within this genre I've created for myself and kind of carved out a niche, the more comfortable I got with pursuing, pushing the envelope of the experimentation I've been fortunate enough to release in the last couple of years. So the last release that came out in October of 2020 was the Three Mothers conceptual EP, which was based on Argento's trilogy, The Three Mothers. And the main influence behind all of this was simply spatial limitations of living in Brooklyn, New York, and not having room at 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning to make noise playing guitar. And I got much more interested in working with MIDI keyboards and kind of had created these 3 soundscapes that didn't really fit in the audio environment that I had kind of carved out for myself with some previous efforts. And a big fan of Giallo films and Argento in general as a visual reference for my own photo work, between composition and lighting. These films are just visually striking and beautiful. So I had been rewatching Inferno for the millionth time, taking some visual cue notes for a photo shoot I had coming up. And I was like, oh, I've got these 3 songs. There's 3 movies. I'll just make the songs about the movies. It's simple, right? So it's kind of the influence of where that concept went. And the deeper I got into trying to connect the music lyrically to the songs, I found it not so interesting to take the view of the protagonist. I'm a big fan of the book Grendel, which is the story of the monster in Beowulf, who was pursued by Beowulf through his eyes rather than being the antagonist. He's the protagonist. So I kind of approached the songs with the same idea that the narrator in the songs is from the witch's eyes rather than through the ones being witched, if you will. Because it just kind of is a different turn of, well, what's the witch going through rather than the same story we've kind of been told via the films and the stories that the films are based on. And it just added an extra dimension of kind of being able to explore you're the antagonist in somebody's eyes, but to you, you are the protagonist. It's like the duality of most stories, or every story having two sides. The Mater Suspiriorum video was released a couple weeks ago. It involves this doll. The story behind the video involves this doll that was found in the woods that caused some eerie, creepy, supernatural happenings during the process of making the video. That was rather bizarre. The initial sketch I had for what I wanted that video to be like was kind of a surrealist, Kenneth Anger meets Giallo horror, a lot of bright colors and flashing lights, and just kind of very dreamlike and not necessarily a specific narrative. And I was shooting some B-roll, and the story goes that I happened to find this doll and brought it home, and a bunch of weird shit happened at home. And I ended up including the doll in the video simply because it creeped me out, and it fit with the vibe of what I was kind of trying to express visually as an accompaniment to that song. I grew up in a house that was allegedly haunted. I never particularly had any specific experiences other than the occasional, like, I thought maybe I turned that light off and the light's on, or nothing really specific stuck out. My mother, however, had some experiences with noises and doors opening, closing. So that piqued an interest for me at an early age of, I guess, investigating or being aware of supernatural happenings. Use the word investigating lightly because I'm not seeking these things out, but digesting that kind of information, be it oral or reading books, documentaries, whatever. So creating a video based around some of the concepts of that, including this doll, was something that I kind of found to be really interesting as it coincided with the themes and lyrical content of that video. I don't really, so we released the record back in the fall. I have zero expectations for anything that I do, simply because I don't really create anything for validation or accolades. I simply do it to keep myself entertained, and to push my own creative, I guess, boundaries of accomplishments and in finishing projects is self-satisfying. So any people that take the time to listen to these songs or check out my photo work, paintings, or whatever, like, I'm extremely grateful for all of that. That I don't have specifically any expectations. However, I am recording, this interview and talking to you wonderful people who are ever watching it. So, like, that's pretty cool. Having anybody pay attention to anything you do is absolutely fantastic. I'm a big consumer of art and media, in a very collector culture of being a massive record collector. Love collecting tapes and love the physical element of being able to interact with packaging. And I think all of that is a great vehicle for a plateau of, or a great plethora of mediums, be it visually, audio wise, people playing on the records, the engineers, whoever did the album artwork. It's a great collaborative effort between a lot of people. So anytime that I can complete a project, I'm satisfied with myself enough that that's all I really need. But if you're interested, that's pretty cool. And it makes me pretty happy to be able to share things like that with you. You know, last year COVID hits, uh, which, depending on your socioeconomic background and responsibilities in your life, it really affected people differently. I try to optimize my time, and still do, and take the, I guess, pause of the world as a um, flattening, evening of a playing field to be able to really explore my creative process in a way that I frankly just didn't have time to do before, between working and other responsibilities. So it allowed me to just spend time making art and pursuing personal interests in a way that I haven't really had since, well, in my adult life. The first thing I got done was a year ago, as I recorded another record that is not a solo record. It's for a project called Suspects, which, if you check me out on Instagram, uh, you can find links to this project. It's called Suspects. It's a 4-song EP with my friend Sean Hain of the Detroit band Thoughts I Am Nesco, that were forerunners into what became the kind of, I think, Botch Dillinger jazz meets metal meets hardcore world of the late 90s. He provided the vocals for that, which was very cool. And we released this cassette tape last month with a 40-page art zine accompanying that. But that was all recorded. Well, my end of it, the guitar and parts, were re-recorded at the beginning of COVID. So it's like I used that time to pour into that. I mean, the amount of photo work I've made, paintings I've made, been working on a new record, got a ambient record entitled Screen Memories, which I will release at some point this year. I'm working on wrapping up some details of that. So I've really spent the last year trying to just be as creative as possible, not only to keep myself sane, which is good, but also to occupy my time and make, I want to look back on the last year, and besides like providing for my significant other and taking care of her, and her taking care of me, also providing for family, friends, whoever needed support. But I want to look back and also appreciate, the fact that I put a lot of work and energy into being creative, rather than sitting around and fucking crying about not being able to go do things. Specifically, be entertained. Don't cry about not being entertained. It's kind of lame. So, I tried to be as productive as possible. I think the way that that's going to shift not only the music business, but just the way that people operate in general, is taking a step back and removing the physical interactions of having to be present, is going to change how all business is done. And, there's this idea of like getting back to normal, but like I don't really understand what normal ever was. Humans face any sort of adversity, and it changes the trajectory of where we go as a society, and that's always normal. The fact that we are alive and continue to grow and adapt, that's normal to me. Not being allowed to like go watch music, okay, yeah, it's inconvenient, a lot of things are inconvenient, but it's still normal for the growth and the ebbs and flows of society. Are we going to get back to a point Are we going to get back to a point of where we were? I don't think so. And I think it's kind of a waste of time and lazy to just cry about not being where we were, when you can think about the future and where we're going to head. There's going to be changes. I think people will be cautious about social interactions, which there's pros and cons to that. But ultimately, what I would love to have seen I don't think this is actually happening, but what I'd love to have seen is people take a step back and reevaluate, kind of what's actually important to themselves and how we work together to attain those goals rather than sitting crying about not having what you used to have versus realizing what do you actually have and how do you move forward and adapt with that. I would love to see bands play again. I'd love to play again, but I also recognize that that's not going to happen right now, and it will someday. And when that someday comes, that's going to be great. I don't live off of touring as a financial stability. I have plenty of friends that do, and I respect their frustrations. But even having conversations and working on a COVID photograph project, photography project of photographing musicians and interviewing them via Zoom, I think the general consensus for most people I've talked to is I'm taking this time to sharpen other skills that I have, write more music, refine that record, rather than idly sitting by. So I think in the long run, all of this could be uh, a radical reset button to reevaluate how we move forward as a society. Well, let's leave it at that. Be excellent to each other, take care of each other, because if you don't take care of each other, then we got this like gross mess of people, and that's kind of just a waste of everybody else's time. Thanks for having me.